So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So you kind of pioneered this whole direct-to-consumer movement before it was cool or even had a name.
Yeah.
What inspired you to start the wave, start the company?
Yeah. So it was summer of 2007, and I had a friend who, quote unquote, invented a better fitting pair of men's pants. And while we were at school, I thought this was not going to work. It's like, how do you do that? And his insight, and I know there's apparently some men's pants entrepreneurs in the room, maybe. Raise your hand somewhere. No. Anyway. Okay, great. See it. So we had this innovative waistband because the insight was that if pants fit your thighs and you grew up with an athletic build, and my co-founder called it a hockey butt, so he grew up with a hockey butt because he played soccer and hockey, so he had big quads and a big butt relative to his waist. Overall, he had some good genes. And so what he would do to make this work is he would buy a size 34 to fit his thighs, and then he would go to a tailor and have the waist tailored into 32. Nice problem to have. And he would do this alteration again and again because he was obsessed with the way his butt looked in his pants, which is historically not a male thought process. He was ahead of his time. And eventually he got sick of the alteration. It was $85 typically. And so he took a bunch of these altered pants at some point to a pattern maker in San Francisco, and she made a pattern from this curved waistband pant. And then drove down to LA, bought a bunch of stretch corduroy fabric, which was perfect for the Northern California climate because in the morning you want to wear pants, and then in the midday you're hot, because 50 degrees to 80 degrees. And just started selling them like hotcakes to our friends. One Saturday we hosted a pants party at our house, and I was pitching in $16,000 worth of pants to our friends. And if you're moving 16 grand of stuff to your friends and it's legal, right? Like you're onto something. And then our whole idea was, let's figure out a way to out-assort J. Crew and Banana Republic on size. So for example, if you're a size 35 by 32, right, or 31 by 36, you can't find those pants. And so that was the idea of let's use the internet because we can aggregate demand. And so we were following Zappos's lead on out-assorting. So our original pitch deck said like Bonobos equals J. Crew times Zappos. And that was how the idea was born.
And so at first you didn't like the idea?
At first, I didn't think we would be able to innovate enough on the product. And I think all of you are here because you figured this out. It's very hard to build an original hero item that's differentiated. And probably if you're here, you figured out a way to do this. He did that, and then my whole thing was let's figure out how to build it through digital distribution. And I don't know if you guys believe this about life, but I think Matthew McConaughey did a good job of like the green lights thing, where sometimes we have a life experience that we don't know why we're doing it at the time, and then in retrospect it makes sense. And it can be hard things in life that feel, someday this pain will be useful to you is a book on my bookshelf. And like sometimes you don't want something to be happening in your life, but if you can take the perspective that later you'll be glad it's there. And we can talk about mental health later. But I had one of those experiences, which was this is not that bad of a life experience, but I spent a winter in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, and it was very cold. And I was working on a really difficult consulting assignment where Sears had acquired Land's End. And so I saw the front lines, because the original D2C brands were catalogs. And so I had a front line seat at the way that a catalog business could deliver better service and more assortment. And so in 2007, it struck us as possible that the internet would become a better catalog.
So you... So you raised venture capital.
Yeah.
What were the pros and cons of raising venture capital?
I mean, at the time, it felt like it was required because there was no obvious other way to build the brand. We were one of the first 50 brands on Facebook. And even then, the CPMs were high. We complain about Meta and iOS 14 now. But even then, I think we were telling ourselves the lifetime value to CAC thing worked. But I think anytime you see lifetime value to CAC in a presentation, it's a lie. Because it just, I don't know. I've never really seen it work. If it were working, we would see public direct-to-consumer companies that are profitable. And we see none, right? Oh, maybe Hims. I don't know. So there are a few. And I admire the entrepreneurs that got to that stage. So At the time, it was required to figure this all out, to figure out distribution, to figure out tech team, to figure out having a broad enough team from customer service, vertically integrated all the way into data science. And I think what we're learning now is that's not the right way to do it anymore.
So if you're starting, let's say we're going to start, put aside your current product pie that we'll talk about, which is very different.
Yeah.
If you're going to start a direct-to-consumer, let's say directionally apparel,
Right.
everything.
It's done.
Don't do it.
We did it. So we have a organic baby apparel brand called Monica and Andy. I'm the Andy in it, which I don't do anything, but my sister is the CEO and is exceptional. And so we have re-architected the company to the new reality. And what are the key ingredients on that? We have one software engineer, right? We're on Shopify Plus. We spend as little as we can on marketing, and I think we've gotten it at this point to under 20%, and we want to drive that to 9%, right? 9% is like Chanel or Nike. Like, this is where you want to end up. And we try to blend the digital business with wholesale. So we're at Target. We're now going to be, I think we're in 2,000 Walmart doors. And we've seen the power of price, which is Monica and Andy is a premium bodysuit for babies, which I learned because we sold Bonobos to Walmart, is actually a small percent of the market. You know, the average retail price point of apparel at Walmart is, depending on the category, is between $5 and $20. So now we have entry-level price point sub-brand, and that business is growing so fast. And so I'd encourage everyone here to think about the possibility of wholesale if you can find an account that pays on time and takes care of the customer.
Would you consider opening your own retail, or how would you think about that calculation?
We went backwards. So Bonobos now is a very profitable company because we have scale. So once you get to a certain level of scale, you can turn the corner. We have 60 stores there. Almost all of them make money. At Monica and Andy, we found that it didn't work. Just baby apparel, it's a narrow moment in time. So we closed everything except New York City and Chicago so that we could redirect our brick and mortar energy to wholesale. Because as you all know, it's hard enough running a digital business. To run digital and wholesale and company-owned retail might be too much for a brand in its early years.
You also pioneered building a tech company in New York. Talk about like the pros and cons of building a company in New York.
Zero cons. I mean, I love New York. It's a personal decision. I remember pitching one of our early angel investors on why New York, and I had these reasons. We're close to production for sample rooms. The fashion PR apparatus is there. It's emerging as a technology city. In 2007, it wasn't quite clear. We really only had Bloomberg and DoubleClick, and now, it's done quite well. But he got to the end of my list, and he goes, "Why do you want to live there?" And I said, "To meet a wife." Nothing against the Bay Area. But it felt like that was a personally exciting place to live, and then I met Manuela there, so that it worked out. I do think there obviously is an SG&A problem in New York City, which is it's expensive. And so now that I live in Chicago, mainly I see the potential as well to build these brands from other places if that's where you want to be. I love the saying that like the company should be based where the founder wants to live, and I think that's true.
Cool. So you're now an author.
Yeah.
So here's the book, Burn Rate. I'll give away the subtitle because it's pretty important. Launching a Startup and Losing My Mind. Yeah. So why'd you write the book?
So I had a secret during my Bonobos years, which is I'd been diagnosed with bipolar type 1 when I was 20. And my family are Punjabi Indian immigrants on my mom's side and Scandinavian Midwesterners on my dad's side. Very different cultures, but with one thing in common, which is we do not talk about mental health in our family. And same for my group of friends. This is, 23 years ago in the Midwest. So I got this diagnosis after a psychotic episode my senior year of college. And I'd been drinking a lot, using mushrooms for the first time, ecstasy. I was having fun. And we decided as a collective that was the reason for this messianic, psychotic, delusional episode. We could talk about how those tend to play out. But it's delusions of grandeur, not sleeping, racing speech, relentless optimism, more or less the central casting traits of an entrepreneur. And then we see it in the data, right? 2% of American adults have some form of bipolar. For entrepreneurs, we think that's 11%. So when someone who has bipolar, by the way, has bipolar, isn't bipolar, right? We would never say someone is cancer. We would say they have it. But for some reason with mental illness, we conflate the identity and the condition. Well, it's bad enough being bipolar. Sorry, it's bad enough having it, let alone being it. And I still, Freudian slip it. So we've just buried it. And I didn't deal with it for 16 years. No medication, no therapy, which is super dangerous. And then as I rode the Bonobos roller coaster, there was a way to explain away the condition by the job. And then in 2016, I had a devastating second episode, spent a week at Bellevue Hospital in New York. At that point, everyone in my friends and family group were clear-eyed. We all rallied together. I was ready to get healthy. I was 36, not 20. Society had changed. I just wanted to take meds, see a doctor, and get healthy. And I was discharged from the hospital straight into handcuffs. I was met by 4 NYPD officers rather than my family. I was arrested and charged with felony and misdemeanor assault because during the mania and psychosis, my then girlfriend, now wife, and my then girlfriend's mom and now mother-in-law tried to prevent me from running naked into the streets in New York. The particular delusion was I thought I was a mixture of the president and Batman, which, by the way, the Dark Knight and the Oval Office, like how badass would that be? But when you're having this delusion, you're a major liability for everyone else. And so they were so courageous to try to keep me from going out, and sadly I assaulted them, which is a common story. And so the next year was more or less a floating pain cave, right? Was I going to get healthy? Was the legal case going to be dismissed? Was I going to lose my job? Most importantly, was I going to lose this amazing woman? And I remember sitting down with my mother-in-law, now mother-in-law, a week after this happened, because I had a restraining order from seeing Manuela, and I thought she would say, how are you doing? And like, nice to know you. And instead, she put her hand on my hand, and she said, Andy, this is just like any physical illness. All you've got to do is take your medication and see your doctor. And if Manuela wants to stay with you, then you have my blessing. And of course, I started bawling.
Wow. So you can read more here.
Yeah.
It's obviously not your.
You don't need to read it now.
Yeah, it's not your it's not your standard entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
So I also saw you give a presentation about the benefits of sleep, which is one of my crusades in life.
Yeah.
So and then you talked about the intersection of the two.
Yeah.
So give everybody the speech on why they need to sleep more and pay more attention to their sleep.
Yeah, I think for bipolar, and then we can bubble back from that, the 3 pillars of health are sleep, medication, and therapy. And for me, actually, if I'm honest, even without medication and therapy, if I slept 7 hours a night to 8 hours, I probably would be able to keep a stable mood. It would be too risky to try just that. But sleep is either a leading or a lagging indicator of mood for almost everyone. And for bipolar in particular, the equation can be different, but it tends to be this, which is if you start sleeping less, your mood is going up. And you end up in a state called hypomania, which basically just means like you feel kind of on fire, that we all have access to the mood state of hypomania. Just think of some of the best days of your life, or the peak days on the job. You are hypomanic. You're feeling good. My doctor jokes, might we all be controllably hypomanic every day? That's like the dream. The problem is if you're sleeping 4 hours a night and burning the candle at both ends and engaging in dumb behaviors, which hypomania includes risk-seeking behaviors, financially, promiscuity-wise, substance-wise, it's not sustainable. And so that's partly why you crash into depression, spend 100 days hypomanic. So that's the correlation between low sleep and high mood. And then the flip side for depression for me is can't get out of bed, which is common. My doctor likes to say, there's 2 kinds of depression: can't sleep, insomnia, and can't get out of bed. I'm the can't get out of bed varietal. So every morning, I send a screenshot of a Fitbit sleep report to my wife, doctor, mom, and sister. My mom, so she doesn't ask, because it's kind of like, here's how Andy's doing based on this. And I used to think that low sleep was a badge of honor. And I've come to believe, you know what, if you sleep 8 hours a night, there's still 16 hours in the day, and you can get a lot done in 16 hours.
How do you persuade people around you to invest in their sleep?
I don't know. I know I'm not worried about other people. Like my wife jokes, like, you're not a mental health therapist, you're a patient. Like, I remember after the book came out, I got 2,000 direct messages across social platforms, and I'm up at 2 a.m. responding to them because they're really meaningful. And my wife is like, is it a great idea for someone with a savior complex to be up at 2 a.m. trying to, like, help people? And so I did get back to people eventually, but I feel like my job is to stay healthy. The bipolar suicide attempt rate for bipolar 1 is 60%, and the suicide rate is 19%. So this is why it's hard. You're diagnosed between 18 and 25 to realize the most probable way your life will end is that you'll die by suicide. So I feel like my job is to stay healthy and tell my story, and everyone's going to hopefully increasingly take more ownership of their mental health and mental hygiene.
Great. So let's talk about what you're working on now.
So I'm working on something called PI. You may know that the Surgeon General has called loneliness a pandemic, officially as of this past year. So we're building, we call it more social, less media. It's a tool to make it easier for you to spend time with your friends and friends of friends. So particularly for people who are single in their mid-20s to mid-30s, there is a dearth of social opportunities because you have a handful of friends, and on your average night, none of your friends are doing anything. So you can find it at getpi.app. It's really early days. It's not a particularly good app. I realize that's a bad pitch, but it would be awesome if you would check it out, because I think someone, and I hope it's Pi, is going to figure out how to use technology to addict people to seeing each other in real life to counter some of the other forces that we have.
Great. So I want to leave some time for questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll try to recognize you in some coherent order. Anybody have a question? What? Oh, my God. You guys are so silent. All right, there we go.
How's your relationship with the people you raised $100 million?
We made everyone money, which helps. The latest rounds probably could have just invested in the FANG index. But yeah, we were. That was really important to me. More important to me was that my team made money. But the only way for the team to make money is if the preferred stock is in the money. So I think our seed investors made 20 times, laddering up to our Series D investors who maybe made 1.3 times. So we were fortunate. The market was different. Revenue multiples were higher. So we were better be lucky than good on terms of our exit.
How did you decide to sell the company?
I needed a job. I had come out of this terrible episode, and then it was been at it for 10 years. Felt the weight of the responsibility. Felt like I dodged such a bullet. Getting healthier, and it felt like it's been a decade. And then I had an experience. I was at a wedding, and I heard from a friend who's friends with an angel investor in Bonobos. They said, we always get Andy's investor updates. They're so positive, but we haven't seen any of our money back. And I was like, shit, it's time to sell.
Yeah, the question over here.
Andy, so in 2013, you had an article on e-commerce there.
Yeah.
Has your perspective changed since then?
Look, I think no, but I think we understand so much more about how to build sustainable, enduring businesses. Part of the things we're talking about, many of the things you all are innovating on. So my feeling about it hasn't changed in terms of the challenges, but my optimism about the ability to build enduring companies has increased. And I think, it's incumbent upon a lot of you to prove that true. It's nice to have a fresher start. When we started Bonobos, Instagram didn't exist, right? So even something as small as that channel, Shopify didn't exist, which, I think it is less of a bear now. It's more of a red bear than a grizzly bear. So I'll update the photo on the article.
Question in the middle.
Great news.
Thanks.
Question for you. You've done a lot of things. What product or service do you wish existed? What would be next for you?
I think that we, in addition to potential online innovation in getting people together, I think we need a fourth gathering places in real life as well. With the decline of faith-based institutions, the third place became Starbucks, and Robert Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone in 2000 about this. Now with remote work, where we don't get to see each other in person as much at work, I think we have an opportunity to restore community, and whether that's town squares, whether that's other retail concepts. Someone joked to me, they said, you need to start a new religion. And I was like, that is a very bad idea. Did you read my book? But I think we need to figure that out. So that excites me. I also want someone to build a great tool to figure out what to watch next on Netflix. It's agonizing.
I'll give you some recommendations afterwards.
Okay, great.
Other questions? Yeah, in the middle again.
So, in e-commerce, in Shopify, it's a unique business in the sense that you sort of have a lever between
Yeah.
Like we ourselves experienced it this year where we set back on growth,
Yeah.
got profit.
What kind of business do you have?
We do e-commerce for wedding in a brand called Sunday Citizen.
Called what?
Sunday Citizen.
Okay, cool.
So how that's sort of the challenge, especially
Yeah.
because we've been
Yeah.
self-funded up until now.
Right.
Trying to avoid VC, like once we get VC funds,
Yeah.
put us all down the road, right? But
Did you do that?
no, not me.
Yeah, I mean, my view on retail, and I got to work with some great retail families at Bonobos. So once we had no more follow-on venture capital because everyone was turning us down, we turned to people that understand how to build enduring retail assets. And so the Nordstrom family invested, the Coppel family out of Mexico invested, and the Chanel family office invested. And one of the things I learned from them is retail is meant to compound double-digit growth for 30 years and raise no outside money. Right? This is how Zara was built. This is how Walmart was built. It's not meant to pretend it's a software. So I think if you have the opportunity to just compound profitable growth, own more, control your own destiny, I think as kind of an average answer to your question, that is a very wise and had historically less heralded path. If you believe the total addressable market is bigger and you want to get there faster, and if doing this for 30 years sounds like a nightmare, then I think you can think about what are the sources of capital to grow more quickly, but I probably would try to raise no more than 10 million in the life of the company, which will just give you more options for, if it is a $80 million exit, have that be a home run, rather than needing this bigger and bigger outcome where you stick the marketing needle deeper and deeper into your veins, and the only way to get out is to find someone who's willing to pay a revenue multiple. And I think that world has changed, and we've seen it in public markets and with private market valuations.
One of the other accomplishments you seem to have that's very rare and founders always dream of is building an actual brand. Like, people actually thought of you as a brand. How did you think about that when you were running the company, or were there any tactical things you did that are different than what other founders do?
You mean personally?
As a brand.
The company.
Yeah, the company brand
Yeah.
actually resonated. And founders always talk about and get advice about building a brand.
Yeah. I mean, one thing just to observe and keep this off the record is, like, at Bonobos, our Instagram is really bad, right? Like, it's not, the engagement's not that high, the likes aren't that high. And one of the things I realize is we overrate the way that we tell the story of who we are through social and through marketing, and we underrate the power of word of mouth from having a differentiated product bundled with a great customer experience. And so probably the bigger reason that Bonobos has a strong brand was that we married great service with great product. And so we took a lot of pride in metrics around how quickly we got back to customers, how we served them, and there's just kind of like the classic stories of going above and beyond, and we delegated responsibility to our team to delight. We had one customer lose their wardrobe and dog in a fire. And so our customer service team lead had the autonomy to send $250, $300 worth of product to say, here's kind of a get back on your feet thing for free. And then the team, what do you say, said, hey, send us a picture of your dog. And then we commissioned a painting of the dog and sent it to that customer. That was an atypical story, but there were lots of 6-packs of beer delivered, and there was a lot of this sort of Nordstrom, Zappos-inspired stuff. And I believe that when you think about Net Promoter Score, you can get another 20 to 30 points on top of your product NPS by delivering great service. And I actually think that's how you build a brand, product and service, not marketing. The joke from a mentor of mine is marketing is a great way to build a bad business.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something to think about.
The other thing you mentioned in the book that's a classic challenge is blending the technology culture, engineering culture, and fashion culture.
Yeah.
Any lessons from that?
It didn't work. It didn't work. We were not able to be both. And maybe the apogee of that problem was we opened an engineering office in Silicon Valley, and we hired a bunch of great engineers. And I thought, oh, this will be fun. I'll split my time between New York and the Bay Area. We'll have 2 great teams. And we ended up with like a tribal war. It wasn't like acrimonious, but it wasn't good because the company was distracted. We had people with different ideas of what the company was about. I sense in this audience that's like less the case now, but we need to leverage companies like OpenStore, Shopify, we need to leverage all these tools and do less and less, and that means you can keep a leaner team. I think it probably doesn't make sense to have more than one employee per million of revenue to make the math work over time, and that just doesn't afford for building a team big enough to have, culture conflict. And ideally, one employee per 2 million of revenue. That's not easy at the beginning.
No,
but it's a way
excellent.
to.
Yeah. Other questions? Oh, one here. Sorry.
The Aura was too big for my fingers, and it hurt like the fingers next to it. But that's kind of a lame comment.
But if you believe in sleep, you're going to hear from Matteo from H Sleep tonight.
Yeah.
You can get H Sleep mattresses, and it'll track your sleep for you, so you don't even need to have any additional hardware.
Yeah, I just need a slimmer version, and then I could re-experiment with it.
We'll go get you an H Sleep mattress too.
Great, that would be amazing.
Any last question? We have time for one more. If anybody has a question, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you speak just a tad bit louder? Yeah. Yeah, we had a really tough co-founder divorce. We were the classic friendship taken into a co-founder relationship rather than a co-founder relationship that generates a friendship. And I think those things are very, very different because the conditions are set that it's a business relationship first. And we both had, I would say, too big of personalities to have both of us at one company. And so it was a really difficult time, and we didn't speak for a few years. I'm really happy that we've come back together, and it's not the same kind of friendship, but at least it's civilized, and we sit down and have affinity. But I think it's really challenged. So I like to joke that when it comes to friendship and co-founders, just don't, unless you're willing to put the friendship on the table and realize that there just is a chance that this could go away. And then I think it's also important to recognize that two founders will rarely leave the company at the same time, probably one before the other. It's not so often that you have two founders just hiring a great CEO and sunsetting. And so I think it's good to practice how you get to radical candor with your partner so you can have the difficult conversations before it boils over, which I was not good at. I modeled the Scandinavian approach to conflict, which is just don't talk about conflict at all until it blows up, which was my dad's family model. My dad doesn't speak to either of his siblings because they don't know how to navigate conflict. Quick joke on my mom's side of the family, the Punjabi side, you say exactly what you think to everyone except the person that you think it about. So it's a perfect exchange of information through gossip. And then in my wife's family, you say exactly what you think. They're New York City and Brazilian Jews. You say exactly what you think to the face of the person you think it about, such that the first time I had dinner with them, my wife was crying, and I thought this was a family falling apart because they were having a fight, which I now have learned is just a spirited discussion.
Exactly. And that is perfect timing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Take care of your mental health.